He's like, you know the reason why most people don't lift? Why, Dad? I don't know. He's like, most people just don't want to take the time to do it. Oh, well, so that I saw that as a challenge. And I said, you know what? Even if it's only for 30 minutes a day, I can squeeze that in no matter what. I will not be that person who doesn't have time for lifting. So then, it just complemented running, because in middle school, before I started lifting, that mile two, that disastrous mile two, my arms would get so tired I'd have to like dangle them as I ran.
What's going on, everybody? We have Carly Kovacik back, and I'm so sorry for pronouncing her name incorrectly. Pretty much any time I've ever introduced her, it is definitely Kovacik and not koh-VAY-chik, right?
It is, but I've heard every pronunciation I think possible, so I eventually correct people, but most of the time it's just gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what, whatever. They mean well, they tried. But actually, you know what the funny thing is, though? Is all my life, like, nobody's been able to pronounce my last name. The most popular thing I get is Kovacik, which is sort of close. But within recent years, nobody can pronounce my last name, but now nobody can spell my first name. So now I have this problem I never saw coming. So, like, on the rare occasion when I go to Starbucks and they ask you what your name is and they write it on your drink, it's amazing what they come up with. Like, I've gotten Carli and Carleigh. I'm like, you guys are trying way too hard. Carli, how hard is that? So
it's the same thing. It's the same thing with Colt too. It's like you're Cody. I'm like, no, you heard it correctly. Colt, just like the gun.
Yeah, yeah. So I've pretty much given up with my entire name, is what it comes down to. So no worries.
All right. Well, for now on, I'm saying that correctly, so you can hold me accountable to that, and that was recorded too. So Carly Kovacik, she was originally on our show as on episode 108. So anything that you would like to know about her, please go back and listen to that one, because that is definitely where we talk about how her story began and what she's been up to as of lately. But now we are going to be talking about running and bodybuilding. Is it possible? That's a controversial topic, and so I thought it'd be great to have someone that has ran marathons on and is also a bodybuilder. So really, I'm here to learn from you, Carly. The shoe's on the other foot now. I feel like it has been for the last year anyway, but I don't know. It feels good. I got my journal here and everything ready to go, and I'm excited to learn from you today. So I think we should pray first. I feel like praying on Hebrews chapter 12, because that is all about running. So therefore, since we have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and sin that so easily ensnares us, and run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lay before him endured on a cross and despised the shame, and he sat down at the right hand of God's throne. Lord, we ask that you would bless this conversation that we are having, that it would be your words, not our words, and that it would glorify and help anybody that's listening that's either a runner or a bodybuilder and wants to be the healthiest version of themselves. So Lord, in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So let's start from the beginning, Carly. Running, why did you even start doing that? Was it for exercise? Was it for just like something that was it for a specific goal, or was it something just like therapeutic that you started doing and you're like, wow, this is a lot of fun? How did it all begin?
Well, it's actually a long story. So taking myself back to when I was maybe about 8 years old, maybe, I actually started with gymnastics. And you're probably looking at me thinking, what? Let me just say it this way.
Well, because you're 5 foot. I'm pulling up your coaching sheet right now.
About 5'7".
Okay.
And I was really skinny.
That's a little tall. That's a little tall for a gymnast, right?
Yeah, and I think I was pretty tall as a kid until I hit puberty. Then I guess I kind of plateaued. So I was a skinny, semi-tall kid, and I don't know what it was. I just didn't feel like I fit in. I wasn't enjoying it. So that was a short little stint, and I think like the season ended or something. So my parents, basically, they told me, you've got to be participating in some kind of sport. So we're going to make you choose between karate and gymnastics going forward. And so I really hated gymnastics for some reason. So I was like, well, karate it is then. So most people don't know, I took karate for about 3 years. I think I started at age 8, ended around 11. And it was, my dad's always been really hard on me playing sports. And he was particularly hard on me during karate for some reason. I think he just wanted to see me excel. He must have thought I was good at it or something. But I got up to green belt, so I was like maybe four belts away from black belt. And each time you test for a higher degree belt, the test becomes harder and harder. You're basically, sparring people, fighting off defenders. It just gets more complicated and more complex as you move up. And so also during karate classes, practice, whatever you want to call it, we had sparring, and I would find people to spar throughout the class, and then we'd finish class and he'd just get on my case for basically sparring everybody that was either at or below my level. And it frustrated me because I thought I was picking people to spar that were better than me, but in his eyes I wasn't. So it got really frustrating. We butted heads quite a bit during that time, and I finally took his advice and started trying to spar people that were higher degree belts than I was. And at one point I took a kick to the chest, and basically I felt like I flew across the room. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced up until that point, and that scared the shit out of me. So he didn't yell at me that day, but I was humbled and, kind of nervous going forward after that. And I tested for my green belt, I think, soon after that. And I remember with that test, I had to fight off like 4 or 5 people, just grabbing, basically it felt like they were pulling out my hair, grabbing me every which way. And I had to, do all these techniques to get out of their grabs and holds. And I think for like a solid 15 minutes or so. And that was exhausting. And I did not like that. And I knew to test, the next belt was going to be brown belt. I knew to test for the next belt, it was going to be more defenders or more people attacking me for a longer period of time. I'd have to, continue sparring people that were better than me. And it was just like, for a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, that was, I guess, overwhelming. I feel like a pussy for saying that now, but at the time that was overwhelming. And I really just wanted my dad to get off my case about it. And I think with the brown belt test too, you had to basically fight off people with weapons or something too. So too complex for 10-year-old me, apparently. So I really wanted to quit cross country, or I wanted to quit karate. So then that took me into, finding another sport to do. And I remember watching a Cleveland Indians game, because I grew up in Ohio, watching a Cleveland Indians game with my parents one night. And I was really intrigued by baseball. And I was like, teach me all the rules. How do I play? And so they explained everything, and I got really into it. And I'm not going to lie, I had a crush on the shortstop at the time, Omar Vizquel. And I wanted to be like him, like he was a switch hitter. And I thought shortstop was the coolest position. So my parents were like, as a female, you can't play baseball, but you can play softball. So I got into softball, and I felt pretty successful at softball. At whatever age, that was probably like me going like 12 years old, 13 years old, like into middle school, and pretty much played every position except pitcher. And again, enjoyed shortstop the most. I was a switch hitter, which was not common. And I used to pride myself on that. I really enjoyed that. And then also got into basketball soon after that. So obviously you're seeing a trend. There's no running here at all. But with all those sports, especially in softball, my sprinting ability came natural to me, actually. I was a sprinter, naturally fast because I was skinny. And what I would do is anytime I'd hit a grounder to like third base or shortstop, I could outrun it to first a lot of the time. And I loved doing that. And throughout, my softball and basketball career, my parents would have me sign up for those little 1-mile fun runs. And you'd have to run the 1-mile run in like physical education class or something too. And I was always that idiot that just started sprinting right when the gun went off. Tried to run for as long as possible.
That was always me too.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry. No, you should have seen it back in my cross country days. Like, you're laughing at me. Like, yeah, no, you running cross country. I would love to see that because I was a joke. But I was this is before I quit cross country and I started lifting weights. And I was like, yeah, no, football and hockey are definitely my sports. But First mile, I want to say about 6 minutes. Second mile, 8 minutes. And I kind of got my act together, and the last one was 7 minutes. That was my last cross country run, and I was like, "Yeah, no, this is not my sport." So it's kind of ironic to be training for a marathon right now.
No, I totally feel you. So okay, so we can relate in that regard. Although you ran more distance than I had at the time, so I was seriously just these 1 mile runs. My parents would sign me up for, or I'd have to do for gym class, and I just wanted to show everybody how fast I was. So that's why I would take off so quickly. And I'd bonk at some point, but I could usually squeeze out like a 6:30 or 7 minute mile. And I loved it because I'm like, I thought that's what you had to do. And, it was just a mile. So you can get through it no matter what. So then my parents, I feel like it was random. They came up to me one night after school and they asked me if I wanted to do cross country, and I didn't even know what that meant. And so they explained, oh, you just go out and run trails, something like that. That sounded awesome because again, I'm like, well, I can just sprint that. So I was like, sure, I'll do cross country. So 7th grade, I started cross country, and I remember at the time it was just basically trail running. So it wasn't bad at all. You could kind of go at your own pace. I had a coach and everything, and we did workouts, but nothing seemed strenuous. And I remember one day we were running after school at a regular pace, and he said something about our first race being in 2 or 3 weeks. And in my head,
I'm sorry. Was this a personal coach or like a team coach?
a team coach, yeah. So yeah, on the cross country team, and
that's a profession that you really can't fake. Being a running coach, you can. Yeah. You can be a bodybuilding coach and be out of shape and coach someone through a show. But if you're but if you're a running coach, like you definitely need to be running everywhere they're running if you're running long distance.
For the most part, although I have seen coaches that kind of sit on the side and just, with their stopwatch, just all right, do your next mile repeat, go.
Yeah. All right. So come back 5 miles later. Yeah, okay. Good job, guys.
Yeah, I'll be right here. I'll have popsicles. Yeah. So when he said that we were gonna have a race in a couple weeks, I was like, well, I didn't sign up for racing. I can't race because in middle school you race 2 miles, and I didn't really have any experience running any more than a mile. So that was scary to me. I was like, I just came here to run after school. That's all I wanted. And the first race was humbling for me. Assuming I didn't walk, I can't remember, but I came in at like 20 minutes. So what? That's over a 9-minute pace. As you get into high school, that's going to get you nowhere. For those people that listen that, that's their pace right now, that's great. But when it comes to competing, as you get towards the varsity level, that's not going to cut it.
Right. So, yeah. And just for the record, I think I think we talked about this, but for anybody listening, that's like, whoa, Colt's running a marathon. Like that's not him. He's a bodybuilder. The goal is to complete the marathon, not to just to do it. So, and just to do it and still be alive by the end of it. That's the goal. If we do that, mission accomplished. So yeah, no, if you're a 15-minute, that's a good pace, right? For high school, 15-minute cross country. If you're a 15-minute or a 25-minute, hey,
for a 5K, 15 minutes,
you're awesome. Yeah,
impressive. But I'm glad you're recording that because I said the exact same thing before my first marathon. So it was just to complete it and not die. So,
yeah. So the first, I'm inspired more and more just hearing that. Great, this is great.
Well, this will get better. So we're still listening to me on the struggle bus. I absolutely hated cross country. I sucked at it. It wasn't fun to suck at it because, you go from being able to crank out some 6:30 mile to finishing a 2-mile race in like 20 minutes. That's embarrassing. And I was just the type that I feel like I was naturally athletic. And so to suck at something, I just made me not want to do it. So I just wanted to stick to softball and basketball. And my parents, they wanted me to keep doing cross country. So I did it the next year. Pretty much sucked just as much as the first year, just hated it. And then in 9th grade, that's when you are introduced to track and field, which is in the spring, cross country is in the fall. So I had to choose between softball and track. And because track involved sprinting, and my dad wanted me to break the discus record for some reason, he thought I could do that. I was like, well, I guess I'll choose track over softball then. So I ended up quitting softball, still played basketball in the winter. And then I did cross country, just, I guess, say I did in the fall, just maybe to stay in shape. I don't know. So then freshman year cross country, there were team captains, because now you're getting into like the varsity level, junior varsity. And the team captains, I don't think any of them would listen to this show, but I don't even know if I keep in touch with any of them anymore. I really did not like the way they led the team. I don't even know if you could call it leading the team. They basically cared about themselves, and we had one good runner my age, and I felt like anytime we raced, they only cared about whether or not she was ready to race, how she performed during the race, and how she felt afterwards. Everybody else was just sort of this person on the team that also ran the course with everybody else. And I felt really secluded. And then by that point, you're running 3 miles, not 2, as you get into the middle or the high school cross country. So you can imagine, if I can only run 20 minutes for a 2-mile race, I'm not very good at running 3 miles either. So I hated every waking moment of cross country season my freshman year. And I told my parents, I made the decision. I was so miserable either at one of the races or one of the practices. I said, I'm telling my parents, I am quitting. I cannot stand this sport. I hate long distance running. It's not for me. I'm just going to stick with track. I guess I won't do a fall sport, and I'll play basketball in the winter. And I feel like that should be good enough. So I told them, one night I just said, hey, I'm not running cross country. I can't stand the girls on the team. No one cares about anyone but themselves. I hate long distance running. I suck at it. I'm rolling out these like 26-minute 5Ks, something like that. One of the last girls on the team, I hate it. Please don't make me run it again. And they're like, well, we'll see, next year. I'm like, no, done. Not running cross country anymore. Mm-hmm. Please respect that. So then track was great because I could sprint. So that next spring, just excelled at all the sprinting events, ran those relays, ran the 100-meter dash, 200-meter dash, maybe 400, and threw discus. And so what coach would make us do at the beginning, he'd make you run, I don't know, maybe a mile around the track and then start stretching. And then you'd kind of break out, sprinters go here to train, discus and shot put go here, distance here. I hated distance running so much, I would actually just skip that mile warm up and just go straight to the discus ring. And just, if it ever caught me, I'd be like, well, I'm trying to break the record, so I just wanted to get some extra throws in. I don't need running for that. I don't know if he caught me. I can't remember. I think he did finally catch on that I was skipping the running portion at the beginning. But I just, again, emphasizing how much I hated long distance running. And I never touched those 1,600 meter, 3,200 meter events ever. So then, sophomore year comes around and my parents tell me, you should give cross country one more try. And I even had my middle school coach tell me, you should just give it one more year. Maybe you'll like it. And I'm over here like, how? It cannot get any worse than it did last year. Their argument was, well, those girls have graduated now. You'll have a new set of team captains. Give it one more year. And if you don't like it, then you can quit. All right. Well, that year started to change everything. So the next set of team captains were amazing. And I started to enjoy it more. And then that's when my dad started telling me, you can go from being the number 5 or 6 girl on the team to number 2. I roll my eyes. Of course, I'm his daughter. Of course, he's going to tell me that. There's no way I can improve that much. You're giving me way too much credit for something I'm not good at. Because that would involve me running like a 21, 22 minute 5K. And I'm over here running like anywhere from 24 to 26 minutes.
It was probably hard for you to see that big picture, but him being someone that's not as, in the moment, tunnel vision, having that big outside perspective, I bet was something that really helped cast that vision and build that confidence for you, huh?
Yeah, although all the time that he said that, I just never believed him, because I think he just thought that I was just naturally good at most sports, but this was one that I wasn't good at. So I just felt like he was telling me that just to keep me going, make me enjoy the sport somehow, but it wasn't working. So I didn't improve much time-wise that year. Definitely didn't go from being like the 5th girl to the 2nd girl by any stretch of the imagination. Still stuck at like 24, 25, 26 minutes for a 5K. So again, you're going nowhere, high school with those times. And then again, track season would come around, and just, I really enjoyed that. Sprinting, discus. In middle school, I broke the discus record, and in high school, I came super close, like 10 feet away. So then it all changed. Actually, this was the big change going from sophomore year to junior year. I was planning on just, having the same strategy going into the next season. Like, I'm a 24-minute 5K-er, number 5 or 6 on the team. And then that's when I got this. So for those of you that are watching, it's this card. For those not watching, it's a card. And it is dated. The edges are like kind of getting frayed here.
So if you're tuning in for this episode, you definitely fall into one of those 2 categories.
I would hope so. Otherwise, I don't know. Just gonna have to take my word that it's a card. So it's dated June 23rd, 2005. So I still have this card from 2005 because it changed my life. Just this simple card here. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna read it. It's from my coach. Yeah. He sent this to the whole team, but he individualized it for everybody. And so it says, "Carly, you are an upperclassman now and a role model for younger runners. The team is expecting a lot from you this fall. You need to be thinking about running a 21 flat, so a 21-minute 5K. Don't doubt yourself. You are probably the best athlete on the team, and good athletes make great cross-country runners. I'll see you in August. Sincerely, Coach Huntington." And I put that down after reading it, and I thought to myself, what if I put in a little bit more work in the off season, like over the summer? What if I put in more mileage? What if I try harder in practice? What if I can run a 21 flat? So the reason I bring this up is because for me, it just took one other person believing in me besides my parents. So sometimes that's all it takes. And so for someone else to tell me I can run a 21 flat, not to doubt myself, that I'm the best athlete on the team, that meant so much to me, because a 21 flat would put me at the 2nd, number 2 girl on the team. So it went along with everything my dad had said. So then I, was like, okay, maybe my dad's right. So we had this thing in high school where it was called Mileage Club, where you run based on the year you're in school. You have to run a certain number of miles before the season starts. So it basically gives you that foundation, so then you can do well in the workouts, and then, hopefully be in good conditioning, good physical shape for the races. So I had never made Mileage Club. I never ran that many miles, as I was suggested to run before each season. So I'm like, what if I actually make Mileage Club? What if I put in those miles before the season even starts? So I did it, and then I tried harder in practice, and I took my time from like a 24, 25-minute 5K to a 21 something that year. I became either the number 2 or the number 3 runner on our team that year. So that just lights a fire in you, and I caught the bug. Soon after that. Hey, I might be kind of good at this. But that's also the first lesson to me that hard work pays off. That is actually true. Because the only thing I did differently that year was to put in the work before the season started and actually try during practice. And the races spoke for themselves. So then I got super excited. I was like, I cannot wait for the next cross country season. I'm going to try to break 21 minutes, of course. So, then track season comes around, and get my sprinting, all that out of the way, and then ready for senior year cross country. And luckily, right before I got injured, I broke 21 minutes that year. So I was pretty solidly our number 2 runner. And then I became one of the team captains and everything, and tried to take all the lessons of what I hated my freshman year about the leadership we had then, and tried, everything in my power to not let any of that happen for our younger runners. And so I think we had a pretty solid team. I think we just had a lot of fun. And to break 21 minutes before graduating I can't even describe to you. I felt like I was on top of the world. And then unfortunately I had a stress fracture or some kind of injury, and I might have even overtrained that year going into the season. I just was not myself about halfway through. So even though I got to say I broke 21 minutes before graduation, my final cross country race of my high school career was like a 26-minute, just because I had no energy. I had some kind of foot injury, and that was unfortunate. But because I loved running so much after that, I was like, well, I'm going to continue to run in college. I went to North Carolina State the year after, which is a Division I school, and you'd have to run for a female, probably a 17 or 18-minute 5K to even be put on the team. Maybe they take somebody who runs closer to 20, but you're probably looking at being one of the last runners on the team. So it was going to be more of like, let me just stay in shape going into college type thing. So that's kind of how it all started. And so then now we get to the point where it progresses from there. So I go to college and I'm signing up for more of those 5Ks. And, sprinting's now kind of out of the question, because you can't just sign up for a 100-meter dash. It's 5Ks, 10Ks, 15Ks. So did 5Ks, and then I took a running class in college for like the physical education credit, and you had to run a 10K to pass the class at the end of the semester, and you had to run it under 50 or 55 minutes. I can't remember which, and that was intimidating to me, because it was like, a 10K, I'm a 3-miler, I'm a 5K-er. I don't do 10Ks. So I had to put in some extra work for that, and I ended up doing it. I think I ran like a 45, or I think it was 44 minutes for my first 10K. And I was like, man, this is so much fun. I'm, exceeding my own expectations the first time I run these races. So after that, I started, I guess experimenting with 15Ks soon after that. And I was like, okay, that's my limit. I'm not doing no half marathon. I'm not doing no marathon. So throughout my undergrad career at NC State, it was mostly 5 and 10Ks, maybe a 15K, maybe. So then I ended up going to grad school in Oklahoma and continued running 5 and 10Ks, maybe a 15K here and there, maybe. And I got my 5K time all the way down to a 19:15. So we're talking about, 6 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
26 minutes or something terrible like that, and 19:15.
So training longer than 5K is something that you believe really helped contribute to your 5K time in and of itself?
That's a good question, actually. I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't really talk about the training for it too much. So in high school, the training regimen was really structured. So I forget what it was, but we'll say Tuesday and Thursday, you have harder workouts where you're doing mile repeats or hill repeats or something like that, or a tempo run. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's putting in mileage. So whether that's, 4 miles, 5, 6 miles, whatever coach wants you to do that day, those were kind of your just, go out and run, stay in shape kind of days. Because then usually we'd have a meet, or the race would be on Saturday. And so sometimes it would vary. If we didn't have a meet on Saturday, then we would do maybe a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where you're doing hill repeats. Mile repeats come to my head. Sometimes 800-meter repeats, which those are the worst thing that's ever been invented by man. I'd rather run a marathon than an 800. There's just something about that pain.
800 was always the worst. I don't know what it was, but it's like I love the mile. I love the 200 to 300 hurdle was kind of my thing too. But that 800, it's not far enough to be considered long distance, but it's just way too long of a sprint.
That's the exact problem with it. Is exactly what you said, and that's what makes it hell. Because it's impossible to pace yourself. You pretty much have to sprint it, unfortunately. And you get, the first lap, you run your 400, and that hurts. And to know that you have to do it again at the same or better pace, that's the worst thing forever. So I despised that. I did everything in my power to not have coach make me do any type of 800, whether it was just the open 800 or the 4x8. Hated, hated, hated. So it makes people, they give me a weird face when I say I'd rather run a marathon than an 800 meter dash.
Mm.
And like, well, the 800 would be done sooner. That's not the point.
Yeah.
So,
And,
so
and
anyways,
it's funny because that's the same reason that I was such a long distance runner too. It's like I was never competitive, but it was just it was therapy. Like I just like I really just actually enjoyed it going for a long run and just kind of forgetting everything. You don't have your phone. I mean, you have your phone on you, but it's not like you can really do anything on your phone. Sorry about my voice too, by the way. Still getting over this bug, but yeah, like I mean, I think you know that my marathon training right now is I just run on Sunday mornings for as long as I can possibly go, usually pushing James in the stroller and Zion with me. But that hour and a half of the day, when you're working 12 hours a day, it feels it like on paper it's a waste of time, but mentally and spiritually, like when you're done with it, man, you feel like a different person. You just feel on top of the world, especially when you hit that runner's high, which, you know, for me is probably like after 2 miles at this point. You know, it's like I'm definitely not even close to where I think I need to be for marathon shape. But yeah, I was hoping to get a better idea of that after we hear more about your marathon running. So.
oh yeah, because eventually this is going to take me into how I didn't plan to be a marathon runner, but became one. But the point I was getting at was everything in high school was so structured with your workouts, your training for your 5K races that were mostly on Saturdays. And honestly, like when I got to senior year, I felt like I was overtraining. I did think coach pushed a little bit too hard that year because kind of like bodybuilding, once you get to like the district, regional, state meet, like that, those kinds of races, they want you to peak. And so you push yourself hard all fall. And then towards November, when these races come around, you taper. So you start to lower your mileage in the hopes that you'll feel fresh and at your peak level of performance when that most important race comes up, and that you would be at that peak level for a couple of weeks. So they push us hard all the way through October, and then we'd get towards I think it was the district meet that was first. They'd taper us a week or two before the district meet in hopes everybody would do well at districts that would take us to regionals. And I just felt like coach pushed a little bit too hard, thinking that we would be good enough to make it to maybe state as a team. And I think that's kind of where having that injury and then just being mentally exhausted and not doing well that second half of the season, I think that might have played a part. It was so hard to even, like, the thought of a mile repeat workout just sounded like death. So when I graduated, if I wanted to stay in shape, I could basically train myself however I wanted to then, because I didn't have someone telling me on Tuesday, you got to do hill repeats and you got to do 7 of them at this pace, you know?
Okay.
So honestly, I wanted to stay in shape in that regard. So I would make myself do hill repeats every once in a while. I would still try to go out and do a tempo run here and there, which a tempo run's basically, you know, you pick what should be around your race pace and run that, or maybe even a little bit faster. But honestly, it was just keeping the mileage consistent, just running pretty much almost every day. And to me, that was so much more relaxing, and just the mental side of running and competing just made that so much easier, just not knowing that I was going to be forced to do these harder workouts. And honestly, I think my performance proved that, because like I said, by the time I got to grad school, I'm running a 19:15 5K. That's just me running consistent mileage leading up to the race, maybe doing a hill workout here and there, maybe. So it was kind of just the freedom of doing things however I wanted to, but knowing that, you know, I had the physical fitness for the race. So I was just putting the mileage in. Mm-hmm. So during my time in grad school, I had an advisor, and he knew I was big into running. So he kind of was overseeing all my research and everything. I'd have to meet with him at least once a week and talk about research. And sometimes we'd end up talking about running. And he said, you have to do the Oklahoma City half marathon. And I said, Dr. Clazel, I cannot run 13 miles. He said, that's fine. You have to do it for the experience. He said, it's a really cool race. The vibe is just amazing. It's something that you got to say that you did once. And he runs it every year just for fun. So that man's changed my life in multiple ways. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you without this man. Just from an athletic and professional side of things, he's saw something in me that I never saw in myself at the time. So wow. I gave in. I signed up for it. And of course, people were like, well, what do you think you're going to run? What are you aiming for? What time? And, you know, just like you with your marathon, I said, I just hope to finish it. And I pulled out one of those race charts that shows the pace and everything and what time you would have based off of that pace per mile. And I said, well, okay, if I'm going to make any sort of estimate here, I'll shoot for maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes, which I think is, I can't remember now. It's probably an 8:39 minute mile. So we'll go for that. So I run this race. I have a blast, and I finish in 1 hour and 37 1 hour and 37 minutes. And I was like, whoa, that's a 7 something pace, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, 7 something. And everybody's like, wow, how did you do that? Well, I don't know. I'm just putting in the mileage for it because I know, again, I do what I want. But if I'm running 13 miles, then I told myself, as long as I can run 9 or 10 miles, then I should be able to run 13 miles on race day. So that was kind of my strategy, was maybe if I was running 4 or 5 miles a day, at some point we got to increase that maybe once or twice a week where you're running closer to 10. And then that way, come race day, taper a little bit before race day, you should be fresh. And with the crowd and everything, 13 miles should be no problem. So then it's a matter of, you know, what time you end up finishing. So a 1:37 shocked the hell out of me. I was really happy with that. And so when I talked to my advisor about it, we were just reminiscing about the race itself, and him and I met up after the race, and I think we took a photo together. And so then, you know, he drops the bomb now. Well,
and just to re-clarify, that's 13 miles in 1 hour and 37 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
sorry, you're saying.
So he drops the bomb. Well, if you ran the half marathon, then next year you should run the marathon. I said, oh, I know where you're going with this. Absolutely not. I said, 13 miles is one thing, but a marathon would basically be me running that race twice. No, that sounds horrible. He's like, but why not? It's like, if you ran that kind of time for the half marathon, why not do the full?
Yeah, but so my dad's run multiple marathons, and he's always said that if you can run a half marathon, you can run a full marathon. Is that kind of true?
Ooh, that probably depends on who you ask. I don't know, actually, because the amount of, like, the training for a marathon is intense, because there's a huge difference between, you know, basically running up to about 10 miles and knowing that you're probably going to be okay to run 13 versus for marathon training. I'll talk about my strategy for training, but to go out and run 20 miles is a completely different animal. So it, like I said, yeah, it depends on the person. Some people might say, yeah, that's no big deal if you know, it's just like running the same thing twice. But in my eyes, that's a lot of extra mileage, both for the training and the race. So I would almost be skeptical of that. I didn't believe it would be possible because the thought of it for me after running 13 miles just sounded overwhelming.
Cool. Next time I talk to my dad, I'm going to say, hey, Dad, you were dead wrong. Yeah, Carly said
so. Carly said so. Well, he could probably put up a good argument against me for why it is possible. So,
he's old school. Yeah, the first one that he ever did, he was was actually at a competition, so he'd never actually ran a full marathon until the day of the competition, and he used that hype and that motivation to do it. And then he did a couple later, and then he did one with his dad too, my grandpa. So that would be kind of a dream come true to do that with, you know, with James someday.
Oh my God, please do it. Yeah.
And then I want to talk about your diet strategy too, like if you had one, because he would it was actually really similar to your contest prep, to your last show, how we had you deplete for an entire week and then refeed on Friday. So he would do that. He would not eat carbs for an entire week and then eat a giant chocolate cake the night before, and that would that's how he did it.
All race, but I guess as a counter argument, or in favor of his argument, I'm actually reading David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And I'm at the part where he just ran 101 miles without any training. That sounds horrible. Probably the worst thing ever. But, you know, maybe.
I love David Goggins.
I know. So
you're the female David Goggins. That's who you are. Bodybuilder, mountain climber, marathon runner. Psh, what don't you do? Tells everybody what the weather is for a living.
I'm a wizard. Well, this guy had like blood running down his leg. Like if I had blood running down my leg, I'd stop. So anyways, I ended up agreeing to do the full marathon the next year. And so my training strategy for the marathon was basically the same as the half marathon. It's just, I call it climbing the ladder. So I forget when I start. It depends on when the race is, but maybe, what is it, like 3 or 4 months, I start climbing this ladder where I will put in consistent mileage through the week. So we'll say, I don't know, 5 to 7 miles was probably typical for me at the time. And every Saturday or Sunday would be my long run. So it would start out as, I think, 9 miles, because if I'm putting in 5 to 7 throughout the course of the week, 9 would be a little bit more than that. So one weekend it would be 9 miles, and then consistent mileage for the next week. Then we climb the ladder to 12 miles for your long run the next weekend. And then again, consistent mileage through the next week. The next step of the ladder was 15 miles. So that'd be the long run for that weekend. Then the next weekend after that would be anywhere from 18 to 20. And so that was the big one. And that was the one where I tried to at least get up to 20. I think one time I did 21, because then you tell yourself at that point in the race, you only have a 10K left. And I know that sounds hideous to most people, but when you're running 20 miles, a 10K after that is nothing. So then you come back down the ladder for a few weeks. So you get your big 20, 21 mile run. Then I'd come back down to 17 or 18 miles the next weekend, and then back down to about 15. And then I think I started the full taper, where your mileage gets pretty low, in hopes of just feeling fresh and ready to go that day. So I think I'd start tapering maybe a week or two. I can't remember if it's the week before or 2 weeks before, but start to get lower mileage. You don't want to be running 20 miles 2 weeks before the race. That's just really taxing on the body. And this is hard too, because this whole time, the
equivalent of squatting and deadlifting and maxing out the week before a bodybuilding show. Why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly. So, and by that point, you're hoping, as you get closer to the race, you're hoping no injuries are popping up, you're not getting sick, all that jazz. So there's a lot going on. And honestly, my diet was never good. So I don't have any diet strategies. I ate like an idiot back in college. It was ravioli, spaghetti 4 or 5 times a week. Protein was not even a thought in my mind. It's so embarrassing.
Which is why when you decided to start bodybuilding, you're like, I should definitely hire a coach to do my meal plan.
Yeah. Oh, it's so terrible. And then after, I would reward myself after my big 20-mile run. I'd go to like Cold Stone and I get like a 3-scoop thing of ice cream. Like, I deserve this.
Yeah. And you darn well did.
Well, yeah, but then it's just not good for you. It's like, no, you should eat a quality protein and a quality carb after that, Carly, not ice cream.
Yeah. So all the high schoolers I'm training, that's a tough one, because the world encourages it too, and it's like, oh no, like you deserve this, and you deserve that, and you're playing 3 sports at the same time, like, because that's what I was doing, and so I was like, yeah, no, the more carbs the better, and that was all it fueled me. It made me a good athlete, but you know, it catches up with you, and you pay for it if you eat like that long term. It really does.
Right. The carbs are good for performance, but for me, it was just there was no thought about whole nutrition. How, you know, how everything was balancing my hormones and my fueling my muscles. Like there was just no thought of that at the age of this is
No.
early 20s. No, just no knowledge either. So no one pushing you. You don't have a weight problem because you're a runner. You're just like, I don't even want to say skinny fat, but because I was lifting. So I, compared to most runners, I feel like I had a little bit more muscle mass, but you know,
So
still
when your lifting obviously wasn't for aesthetics back then. It was more performance based, like to complement your lifting or
it
your
was
running.
just, it all started when I was 14, a couple years after I started running. My dad wanted me to do it for discus and track to help break the record. And then I remember he said to me one day, he's like, you know, the reason why most people don't lift? Why, Dad? I don't know. He's like, most people just don't want to take the time to do it. Oh, well, so that I saw that as a challenge. And I said, you know what? Even if it's only for 30 minutes a day, I can squeeze that in no matter what. I will not be that person who doesn't have time for lifting. So then, you know, it just complemented running because in middle school, before I started lifting, that mile two, that disastrous mile two, my arms would get so tired, I'd have to like dangle them as I ran just to like let them rest. And when I started lifting, there was no more of that. You could just kind of power through. And it helped me push up the hills and the inclines quite a bit.
Wow.
So, and I think honestly, my leg workouts were nothing spectacular at the time. It was leg extension, leg curl, and leg press. But I really think that has attributed to me not having any knee problems or really any big running injuries because of building a little bit of strength in those muscles.
I was gonna say one of the things that I, you know, obviously respected about you as an athlete before we ever started working together was how strict and slow and controlled your form was. But I was also kind of intrigued at how like you would always, you know, like you're in the gym, you see the same person working out every time you're in the gym, and so like I wasn't picking apart the way you work or the way you work out or anything, but it's like definitely something that I notice and think about. And I'm like, she does a lot of high reps. I'd never see her going heavy, and obviously there's a lot of wisdom around that because of how concerned you are about injuries, and so you know how far to push yourself and where that limit is. We've been working a lot on that lately, but it would make sense that you're using more of those slow twitch fibers for running, right? And so maybe that's why that style of training, even as you started getting more into training for aesthetics and more for muscular hypertrophy, that kind of created a foundation for your style of training, right?
Yeah, I think that was part of it, but then it was also just the way I was taught. So that's how Dad taught me. He must have had some kind of lifting experience because he was a football and hockey player, but he would not let me go up and weight.
Sounds like an awesome guy.
Oh yeah. So I find that awesome that he played hockey because besides you, I don't know anyone who's played hockey. But he would never let me go.
Taylor, now I know too.
That's true. Yeah. Yes, definitely. So he wouldn't let me go up and wait until I perfected the form. And for some of the isolation movements, it was just hard to go heavy without breaking form. So he had me start at 2-pound dumbbells and had me do like bicep curl, shoulder press, like the basics. And I had have to prove to him that my form was good before he'd let me use the 3-pound weights. And I was just like, come on, can I please use the 5s next week? Not until you perfect the form with the 3s. So then we moved on to the Bowflex, and it was down in our basement. And so I'd be doing like the front shoulder raise on the cable, and I could hear movement. I could hear footsteps above in the kitchen, and I could tell they were coming down towards the basement. And so then I'd just get really, really strict form as he came down the steps and saw me lifting, because I was like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You're not raising your elbow. Yeah. And then sure enough, he would sit down at his desk, which was right beside the Bowflex, and he'd be doing his thing for a little while, and I'd be on my next set. And then all of a sudden I could just see my peripheral, I could see him looking at me, and he's like, you need to go down and wait. I'm like, no, I just went up and wait. He's like, you're not leading with your elbow. Go back down and wait. So then he's like, do you want me to come show you what that's supposed to look like? I was like, sure. So then he tilts my elbow forward and he's like, now lift. And I'm like, well, now I can't. He's like, exactly. Go back down and wait. I was like,
How
So
far did you have
anyway,
you twist your wrist forward? Was it what was it like Arnold teaches in his book to where it's like you're pouring beer out of a pitcher, or like is it like I can't see a
he,
wrist?
I can't, where is it? There we go.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, right there. Okay.
he always had me, the elbow had to be higher than the wrist to
Hmm.
really isolate the shoulder. And then I had to have that bend too, that proper bend. So
Yep,
anyway,
perfect.
that's how I
But now you
learned,
guys, but now you guys got that super cool machine at Body Shop that that's the side delts better than like anything on the
right,
planet. So you don't even
right.
need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Sorry. Okay, okay.
easy,
So okay.
easy
So back
side
to
of
the side laterals.
anyway, well, that was it. That was just, that's how I got into like the lifting to complement everything. So back
Yeah.
to the marathon training. So you're trying to taper and all that. And like I said, you're still trying to not get sick, not get injured, all leading
Mhm.
up to the race. And
Yeah.
your nutrition should be on point. Mine was not, but it should be. Um, and so then for the marathon, it was the Oklahoma City Marathon. And again, I had no goal. The goal was just to finish without dying. And I didn't want to walk either. And so my estimate was like I don't know, 4 hours and 15 minutes or 4 hours and 30 minutes, which again I don't remember off the top of my head. I think that's like 9 minute, maybe a 9 minute pace. I hope I'm not super off. But I ran it and I felt great. The only problem was I tied my shoe too tight on my left side, I think, and like the tongue was just digging into the front, like bottom part of my shin or where the shin meets the top of the foot. It was excruciating, but I wasn't gonna stop to adjust that. So
Mhm.
that was the only complaint I had during that. And then I finished in 3 hours and 27 minutes. So
Wow.
basically, just over an hour of what I thought maybe I would do. And I was shocked. And just as a little background, the Boston Marathon, you know, even in cross country, I was like, that would be a dream to do that because that's the only race in the US that you have to qualify for. I think
Mhm.
Chicago and New York are more lottery based. But Boston, you have to run a certain time at another marathon and submit your time and then hope you get accepted. So it's, the most prestigious race in the United States. But I said that, that would be so cool to do someday, but there's no way I'd ever be that good. So, and then it wasn't even a thought when I ran this marathon in Oklahoma City that Boston would even be uh, any type of thought in my mind. So I crossed the finish line at 3:27, feeling pretty good. And everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. And I was like, yeah, pretty good. Stroke my ego a little bit. And ironically, I go home that night and I had posted about it on Facebook. And I really hope she listens to this episode. I'm actually going to tag her in it because I've been talking to her a little bit more recently. Her name is Grace Jessup. I ran club cross country with her my senior year at NC State. And her comment on my
So this isn't Gigi.
no, it's not that Gigi's my best friend. I didn't even know Gigi at this time.
Okay.
So this is Grace, just a member on the club cross country team that I spoke to maybe a few times, but we were friends on Facebook. She leaves a comment on my marathon post and she's like something Boston qualifier or you qualified for Boston. And I read that and I had no idea because I never thought I'd be that good. I had no idea that I qualified for Boston. If she wouldn't have told me, I might not have ever put two and two together. So I really appreciate that comment for her. And we hadn't probably spoken in several years. So for her to say that, I mean, that just like made my night. I was oh, my first marathon. Someone who used to suck at distance running, hated every second of it, was going to quit after freshman year, ran her first marathon and qualified for Boston. And I told myself, you can't qualify for Boston and not run it. So,
Mhm.
well, son of a bitch, we have another marathon on our plate here. So, Oklahoma City was in May. And for Boston, the you submit your qualifying time in the fall, so like September, and then they cap everything at 30,000 people. No more than that for the race. They tell you a couple weeks after you submit your qualifying time, and then the race is that next April.
Okay.
So I submitted my time 3:27. The cutoff for the qualifying time was 3:35. So I beat it by 8 minutes. I got accepted, and that would have been my first year doing Boston was 2014, which was the year after the bombing. So the bombing was in 2013. I actually had some friends from high school that ran that race that year, and luckily they were okay. But that meant for 2014 that the security was going to be a lot stricter, and we didn't really know what to expect. And everyone's going to kind of be on edge after that too. So my dad was like, my dad's my biggest fan. He was so proud of me and so happy. And so he's like, you and your mom, we're gonna come with you, and if Aaron can come too, my brother, then we're all gonna come. We'll make like a weekend out of it or whatnot. So I pretty much did the same training strategy as the previous marathon. Just climb that ladder, climb back down the ladder a little bit. Hope you don't get injured. Hope you don't get sick. Nutrition still not on point. The Miss Spaghetti girl over here eating spaghetti 5 times a week, thinking that carb loading is the way to go. So I ran my first Boston Marathon in 2014. And so there's some funny stories with this. Wow. So because of the bombing, they, just like a bodybuilding competition, they have hotels that they want you to stay in. And then the athletes take a shuttle to what they call Athletes Village, where you basically just stay there until it's time for you to start the race. Meanwhile, my parents have to figure out how to take a subway to a part of the race where they hope to see me. And they don't really know what to expect after the bombing, because they're not going to let you get super close to the course. So I take the shuttle to Athletes Village, and I love the way Boston does this, because they basically stagger everybody's start time based on your qualifying time. So you have a certain colored bib if you qualified by, I don't know, more than 10 minutes or something. And then another colored bib if I guess qualified between a certain amount of time as well. And then there's people that if you raise enough money for charity, you can qualify for Boston and run it, in honor of your charity or something. So then those people basically go last. And I like the way they do that, because I hate it when I'm at the starting line and you get people that shouldn't be at the front of the line. And so I'm famous for throwing elbows against because it's like,
that's why your dad had you doing side laterals. Bam, get out of my way.
Yeah, exactly. Get that elbow strength, even some shoulder power with it. But I used to push people out of my way all the time, because I'm like, damn well you shouldn't be at the front of the line like that. So, and you're making me waste precious energy to go around you, and then asshole me would then cut them off as soon as I pass them, and just to make a point of it. But I'm like, Carly, that probably wastes more energy than just passing them. But anyways, I like how they stagger everything. So I'm at Athletes Village and I'm waiting for my start time. You want to get there early enough, just like a bodybuilding show. And there's a line for the porta potty. There's probably 25 porta potties with this huge line. And so I'm like, well, I better go get in that line now. So as I'm in line for the porta potty, there's this lady, and she looks at me, is this your first Boston? Yeah, first and second marathon. She's like, okay, well, I want to give you some advice. She's like, be careful through the first half of the race, because this course will take a toll on your quads. And I'm 24 at the time. And I give her the respect and say, oh, thank you. But in my head, I'm like, oh, lady, I do leg extensions. I do leg press. I've been doing it for 10 years. I've never had a quad injury. I've never had a quad problem. I'll be fine. I was like, in my head, I'm offended that she would even say, watch your quads.
Well, and let me just throw in a little extra context too, is that you are also very posterior dominant because of your long femurs. So I kind of see where this is going.
Okay. So I get out of the porta potty line eventually. It's time to start the race. Yeah. And I am having the time of my life. And the energy at Boston, especially in 2014 after the bombing, was just unprecedented. I can't even describe it. Millions of people, or thousands of people, just along the sideline as close as they can, just cheering you on. It's so loud. There's so many people in the race that there's really not a lot of space between you and other people, but there's people blasting music and there's people drinking beer on the side. You're seeing everything. It's just as I'm running, I feel so good. And I was like, man, trained right for this. I feel so good. This is amazing. This atmosphere is just incredible. This is one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life. And
That
I get about to mile 15 or something. And what you don't realize is the first half of Boston is this gradual downhill that you really can't notice. And then around mile 15 or 16, it turns into these rolling hills. And then that takes you to Heartbreak Hill, which I can't remember off the top of my head is like mile 21, 22, or 23, somewhere in that range. And then you basically descend pretty straight down into downtown Boston and finish the race.
wow.
So mile 15, I'm transitioning to these rolling hills, and I tell myself, my legs are feeling a little funky. I've never felt this before. Don't think about it because your mind wants to go, oh, you still have basically a half
Yeah.
marathon to go.
It,
You're
it
only
sounds like
halfway.
a muscle imbalance because your quads have never had to keep up with your with your glutes and hamstrings like that before.
Oh, Colt, just wait. So, yeah, these rolling hills just obliterate me. And by mile 20, as I get towards Heartbreak Hill, I am in so much pain, and it's
Muscular pain or
unbelievable.
joint pain or a combination of both?
I don't even know. I'm probably muscular pain. I don't know. Um, and I was terrified of Heartbreak Hill because it's a hill, and I'm already struggling on these rolling baby hills. And I started going up Heartbreak Hill, and I was like, maybe this is what everybody means by Heartbreak Hill, basically being this horrible thing 3/4 of the way through. And actually, it felt better going uphill. It wasn't pleasant by any stretch of the imagination, but it was better. But coming down Heartbreak Hill, those last 3 miles was the most excruciating thing I've ever encountered in my entire life. To this day, I climbed the 14,000-foot Mount Shasta in Northern California last year. And that was a close second, but still, and Mount Rainier, climb Mount Rainier. Still never been in as much pain as the 2014 Boston Marathon. And after with the whole bombing thing, I seriously had thoughts in my head. I'm like, this sounds horrible, but at the time I didn't care. I said, I hope someone stabs me from the sideline. I just want to die. And I said, I will not stop unless someone kills me, because I want to touch that medal. That would mean the absolute world to me, to know that I ran the Boston Marathon without stopping, and I got to physically touch that medal and earn that medal. So I said, you cannot stop until you touch that medal unless someone kills you, which I said, at the time I was like, I really hope someone does, because I'm in so much pain. And I also looked at my watch, and that last mile, I looked at it and I said, if you don't run a 7 or 8 minute, I think 8-minute mile, this last mile, you will not qualify. You'll be right on the cusp of qualifying for next year. So I had to bust out like an 8-minute mile, that last mile, in this excruciating, uncontrollable, I don't even know how to describe to you, pain. And I finished in 3:32. So I beat the qualifying time by 3 minutes to qualify again for next year. Touched that medal. It was, I can't even describe to you how cool that feeling was, to feel that medal and to know that I fucking did it. But then I said, I told myself, you're in trouble though. And you see the table of food and electrolytes and drinks not too far in the distance, but I also saw this curb. And rule number 1 after you finish a race is you never sit down. And I said to myself, I'm going to do everything I shouldn't now because I am in so much pain. I'm going to go sit on that curb, and I just need to recover for like 10 minutes. So I sat on this curb, which
And the reason not, I'm sorry, why would you not want to
I
sit
had
down?
always heard that it like led to like cramping, and you wanted to kind of keep the blood flow consistent throughout the whole body. So like they want you in cross country in high school to just stand like this with your heads against the back of your hand and just walk it out, not
Okay.
sit. So I
Yeah,
sat.
because like Taylor knows after my runs too, after an hour and a half of running in the morning, when I get back, it's like I'm a vegetable. Like I can't talk for 15 minutes, you know. And then like of course she is like asking legitimate questions, like, okay, you know, like about church and like the rest of the day and stuff. And I'm like, babe, give me 20 minutes. Like literally, my brain is not back yet, and that's when it's time to shower and just keep moving. But yeah, sitting down would be, I'd
Oh,
feel like I would pass out.
oh, well, to me, like it was hard to sit down, so I sat down, and then I
Mhm.
was just sitting there for a minute. I'm looking at other runners and just thinking to myself, why is nobody having as many problems as I am after this race? And then with the bombing, your parents can't meet you at the finish line. They have to be somewhere else, and then you go meet them there.
Mhm.
So that was another problem. So after about 10 minutes or so, I said, okay, let's go find them. I had my phone strapped to my arm, and I texted them that I was gonna try to go find them. And I went to get up, and I couldn't get up. My quads were essentially paralyzed. I could not stand up. And so I got scared because I've never had that happen. And I'm just sitting there, and I was like, well, I'm too embarrassed to call for help at this point. I can do this. I just ran 26 miles. I should be able to fucking stand up. I tried a couple more times and I couldn't get up.
Yeah.
And so finally somebody noticed, some medical person, and they asked me if I needed medical attention. And my pride, your pride at 24. No, I don't need medical attention. I just need someone to help me stand up. And they knew I was in bad shape. So I actually brought a wheelchair over, and I had to take a wheelchair to this tent. And I was so embarrassed at the time because like I'm this tough athlete. I don't want someone to take me out like in a wheelchair somewhere. So I forget what ended up happening after that, but I ended up recovering a little bit enough to like be able to get out of the wheelchair and go find my parents. And I just felt like crap. My mom had brought me flowers and everything, and they were so proud of me. And I had heard them calling to me around mile 20 or something, but I couldn't see them with the crowd, and with the security, they were a little bit further back. So I didn't get to see them during the race, but I'm not kidding you. So we went out to dinner that night, and after a race, it's hard to determine what you want more, sleep or food. And you want sleep to win, but you know that your stomach's growling, so you won't be able to sleep unless you eat. So it's this really complicated conundrum. And after a marathon, it just feels 10 times worse. So was dealing with that, but then also I couldn't sit on a toilet without help. So someone either had to like help me sit down, or I'd have to grab the countertops or the toilet paper roll just to help me sit down. And then the shower had a tub. I had to have somebody help me like get my feet over the tub portion to even get in the shower. That lasted 7 days. It was 7 days of that torture. And I had so much gratitude for my quads after I finally recovered from that. I did not realize how much you use your quads just to do something as simple as pee. so, so I ended up, like I said, I qualified for the 2015 Boston Marathon by 3 minutes, submitted my time, and went again in 2015. Did the same training strategy, no nutrition, same training strategy. My parents came out to that one again, and um, so the weather the day before was beautiful, but the weather forecast for the next day looked horrendous.
Mhm.
Torrential rain, strong winds, cold temperatures. The day before was like 50 and sunny. But that's Boston in April. So my parents were going to plan to do the same thing. They said, we're going to take the subway, and then we're going to meet you. Well, we're going to call your name, hopefully around like mile 20 or something. And I said, okay, cool. I took a shuttle to Athletes Village again. It's starting to rain pretty good. And I'm like, this is going to be a miserable, miserable day. And so we start, and as soon as like a couple minutes after I start, it's a torrential downpour. It's 37 degrees, and I am just it's just hell. And I was like, how am I going to run 26 miles in this shit?
Hey everyone, Coach Taylor Milton here. Welcome to Skullbellz TV, the official YouTube channel of supersetyourlife.com, where you're going to discover a weekly upload of quick and easy to follow workout tutorials featuring Coach Colt, myself, or one of our athletes to keep your workouts fun, practical, and effective. our family's latest keto carnivore recipes that fuel Colt's competitions and keep myself and our kiddos strong and healthy. Video uploads of the supersetyourlife.com podcast, now over 100 episodes, your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym, and much more. Last thing before we get into the video, we're asking a big favor from you. This has been working beautifully, so if you would please think of someone you care about that would benefit from this video, go ahead and smash that like button, click the share button, and text this video to them. That would mean the world to us. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more exciting content from Skullbellz TV, because our team has lots of meat and lots of muscle coming your way, and I promise you won't want to miss it. When you hit the subscribe button, you'll see a bell icon pop up. You want to click that too so you're notified every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to us. Every like, share, and subscription helps our channel grow and supports our family's hard work. So thank you so much for doing your part too. That's all we ask. God bless you, and please enjoy this video.
And it never really let up. And then also I had to, I was worried about the whole quad thing again. So my strategy this time around was just to pace myself better. So not think you're on top of the world for the first 15 miles, but just run at a consistent pace that's decent, but then don't go crazy. Like, realize that you're going downhill. Try not to use your quads any more than you have to. I don't even know how you really do that, but anyways, I get to mile 15 that day and feeling a lot better. It's just the weather's just hideous, and get to Heartbreak Hill, almost Heartbreak Hill. So I heard my parents calling me, and I was actually like on the left side of the course and they were on the right hand side of the course, and I hear Carly, and I'm running, and I look over and I'm kind of like running past them, and I was like, oh, you know what? I want to go give them a high five and hug them. And I had this protein bar. Why I was eating a protein bar, don't ask, but it had froze. It was like rock solid. I used to think oh, this is embarrassing. I used to think that I got better energy off of protein than carbs. And now I'm like, oh, it doesn't work like that. You idiot. So it had froze. So it was like rock solid. So I was like, well, I'll give them my protein bar too, so I don't have to carry it the next, 10 miles. And so I had to kind of jet like diagonal backwards a little bit to go over to them. And so I'm like cutting in front of all these runners. They're probably like, what the hell? But I'm like, I don't care. I gotta see my parents. So I get over to them and they're like, good job. And I give them both a high five. And I think I gave them a hug too. We're all soaked. We're just miserable. And then I said, can you take my protein bar? It's frozen. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'll see you guys at the finish line. And so everything, the rest of the race goes really well, except after Heartbreak Hill, you descend down into downtown Boston. And that's when we were getting like a 30-mile-an-hour headwind. So now you've got decent rain, 37 degrees, 30-mile-an-hour headwind, and just complete misery. And I look down at my watch and I'm like, I'll be damned. If I don't run these last couple miles at like an 8-minute pace, I will miss the qualifying time for next year again. Why does this always happen to me? So I had to crank out like these fast last couple miles amidst these horrible weather conditions. And I gave it my all and I finished. And again, I finished in 3:32. So both races I ran a 3:32. So I'm like, gosh, I qualified again for next year. Oh boy, here we go again. And so then I'm like trying to text my parents, figure out where they are. And, a couple minutes after I finish, I'm like, oh gosh, now it's getting real cold because all my sweat is starting to evaporate. And I've got these windy conditions. It's raining, it's cold. And so I said, okay, until I hear back from them, I'm going to go in this little, they had this massage place. I'm just going to go in there. Maybe I'll get a massage until I hear from them. So I go in this place just to get dry, really. And there's like a little line. And I said, I'm just trying to, stay warm or whatever. They're like, okay, we'll come warm your muscles up. Come here. They give you these like things of broth. And I was like, oh, the last thing I want after 26 miles is broth. They're like, oh, for you to stay warm, you need to have it. It was the most disgusting thing I've tasted. And then I'm laying on this like bench with this, I think I was getting a massage or I was just laying there. I can't remember, but there's somebody next to me. And then my parents texted me. They're like, we're outside of where you are. I'm like, oh, okay, good. And the lady's like, "Oh no, you can't leave until you stop shivering." It's like, "Excuse me?" She's like, "You need to stop shivering before I can let you leave because I don't want you to get hypothermia." And so I had to explain, "Lady, I will not stop shivering until I get out of these clothes. So the more you make me stay here, the worse it's actually going to be. My parents have somewhat dry clothes waiting for me that I'm going to go change into, and they're waiting for me outside. I need to leave." So finally convinced her to let me leave. I'm like, "Trust me, I know my body. I'm going to be fine, but I won't be fine if you keep me in here." So we all met up afterwards, went out to dinner, and dad was so proud of me, mom was so proud of me. And I told him I qualified again, and they're like, "When's this going to end?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. You can't qualify for Boston and not run it."
Mhm.
So I submitted my time for 2016, and again, they only take 30,000 people. Well, they reached that limit into like for that next year, and so they had to bump up the qualifying times by like 4 minutes, I think, or 3 minutes, something not too much, but enough. And when they did that, I missed it by 20 seconds.
Ugh.
So I didn't qualify. But if you remember, like the story I just told, those, where those last 20 seconds were?
Where?
My dad. So it gets a little emotional, but yeah.
That's amazing.
That was the last time he got to see me compete in any sport, and he was my biggest fan.
That's amazing. I hope I can have the same kind of impact on my kids too. It's like our whole goal right now is with James too is to keep identifying what he's good at and what interests him, and just helping cultivate that, because nobody can like your father can.
Right.
I look.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, no, you're exactly right. And it's not something you realize until you get older. So, and in this case for me, I didn't know at the time that would be the last time he'd ever get to see me compete. But you and I were talking about this recently. I don't think I ever want to run another marathon, because the way it ended for me was just so perfect. For him, like as my biggest fan,
That's why I
for
don't
him
want to step on stage anytime soon. It's like that last show is like 5th place in classic physique. Man, I can ride that out for the next 7 years until I actually have a chance at becoming a pro. So
right, exactly. Yeah.
I know it's like hockey. It's like I can't play rec hockey anymore. It's like we won the championship in high school. It's like you just can't.
And
you got to do something else after that.
and this was Boston, so
Mhm.
I definitely would never run Boston again, because
To put your body through all that, knowing full well you'll never top that experience again, because how can you? Everything ended so perfectly.
Right. And so I think it was a sign from God too, because my plan after that was, because I didn't know my dad was going to die 2 years later. Or 3, I guess it was 3 years later. I didn't know he was going to die 3 years later. I was going to run like Toronto or Chicago or something and try to requalify again for Boston for 2017. But I ended up getting injured that fall after I found out I didn't qualify for Boston. And we couldn't figure out what it was. And it kind of took the wind out of my sail. It took me out for a good 4 or 5 months. And it messes with you mentally when it's that long. I was doing MRIs. It was some kind of groin thing. As I was running, my groin would just tighten up. And then once it did, I had no stride. And there was no warning sign. I could be out a mile, 3 miles, and it would just boom, tighten up. And then I could only walk. And so I was like, well, that's not good for marathon training. MRIs didn't show anything, except they found a cyst on my ovary, a pretty big one, but it ended up being like, I guess benign. It didn't really matter. And then after that, they're like, we got nothing. I don't know what it is, but I almost wonder if it was something posterior, because I didn't get an MRI on the backside, because I thought it was groin. I thought it was the anterior, like somewhere in my pelvis, but maybe it was some kind of muscle imbalance stemming from the posterior. I have no idea. But, I didn't really know how to heal it, because I didn't know what it was. So kind of just, I don't know, maybe I still have it to this day. I don't know. But
Wow.
that's when I got into weightlifting, after that. So, but yeah.
That's amazing. I had a couple questions for you too that I just jotted down, if you don't mind. First one was how so for joint pain, you know me, I weigh 200 pounds. I'm maintaining my body weight right now, between 195 and 200 pounds, eating 4,000 calories a day on a meat-based diet, and my fats at about 60%. And so that's been helping keep my inflammation pretty low. And so it seems to be the best of both worlds in terms of endurance training and bodybuilding, and that's regardless of the hypertrophy, benefits from having those macros set the way they are. But it's been really, really helping my chronic inflammation in my knees and in my ankles. Like I feel like my knees and my ankles are kind of the one thing that I'm trying to work around right now that's been particularly challenging. That and hip flexors especially. So I stopped doing Roman chairs at the gym. But I'm just wondering if there's any is there anything that you did that was like really key in maintaining the long-term health of your knees as you were doing all this running? Because I don't want to end up like my dad. He's done a few marathons and he's just like, it really did take a toll on my knees long term. So I'm doing a lot of other types of cardio, like hour-long treadmill, incline walks, stuff like that, stair mill to try to preserve my joints. Have you ever done any like non-running cardiovascular training, like swimming or anything, in preparation for these marathons?
I feel like I'm an outlier when it comes to all these questions, but there's a few things.
That was a lot of questions too. Sorry about that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's hard when you've never had a problem. You have to think back of like, why do you think that's the case? But so one of the things I was always, my dad was strict about, but then I became strict about too, was step one was to have a really good pair of running shoes to the point where you go get fitted from somebody who knows what they're doing. Not necessarily like a podiatrist or something, but
yeah,
somebody.
I think you've seen them. I got a good pair of Asics.
Okay, Asics. I like Asics a lot. But it depends on your foot. I know people that swear by New Balance, and like New Balance are not for me. So, but it's important to have a good running shoe, and they make different models of running shoe brands, specific for marathon training, specific more for like shorter distance training. So really having somebody understand what your goals are and then how to fit it to your foot, I think is crucial, because I stick to one guy since high school, and there have been twice that I've strayed from him. And one time I went to his store, but he wasn't there. And I basically told somebody, these are my goals. I just need a new pair of running shoes. What do you recommend? And he gave me a pair of Sauconys. And again, some people they run well in Sauconys, but about a week into my Sauconys, I had shin splints. And the second time was I went to just a different running store, and they said that the Asics model had changed, and here's the new model. Same thing, got injured. So I've found a brand and somebody who I trust with my feet. And so I think that's been key, honestly. And I don't think a lot of people take that into consideration. Your shoes, they should be replaced. High school coach always told me about 500 miles, change your shoes, or, whenever the tread starts to noticeably wear, whichever comes first. But I think there's a lot of people that, one, don't take the time to find a proper running shoe, and two, don't replace them when they need to, because they're not cheap. A good pair of running shoes, especially for marathon training, runs you like $170, $180. And you're doing a lot of mileage, so you're probably gonna have to replace them. I don't want to say quickly, but within 6 months or so, probably, if I had to estimate. The other thing was, I think I got lucky in the fact that I started weight training early, which I think helping like have some kind of muscle strength surrounding the knee, I think has really
and all those
helped.
compound moves are particularly good for your joints and ligaments too.
Yeah, which I wasn't doing any squats or deadlifts. It seriously was the basics, whatever the Bowflex could do, which was the leg press, the leg extension, and the leg curl. But my dad was always adamant about keeping whatever you're doing for your quads, you must be doing basically the same amount of volume with your hamstrings, and the weight shouldn't be terribly far off from one another. Like if you're doing a leg extension of 90 pounds or something, and you can only hamstring curl 10, it's like there might be a problem. So he was always adamant about I guess being symmetrical, proportional, whatever you want to call it, within those muscles too. So I think just having an early start with that worked to my advantage, which you can't change the past. So somebody who doesn't have that foundation, I do think that plays a part, unfortunately. But my dad still always said, even though he was my biggest fan, he'd get out of my case about my training sometimes. Because yeah, I'm famous for overtraining. You know that. Bodybuilding, running, no matter what it is, I overtrain. And he's like, you're gonna need a knee replacement by the time you're 40 if you keep this up. And I was gonna prove him wrong. So I'm still going to try to prove him wrong, but I don't run near as much as I used to. So might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But
So,
I mean, at least the shoes you can control.
mm-hmm. Did you do any other type of cardio like swimming or biking or anything to increase your overall cardiovascular health and just give yourself a break from running?
Probably not as much as I should have, but I did bike. I had a mountain bike when I was a kid or a teenager. So there'd be a couple times a week where I'd bike, but I think I'd still run most of those days. I think it might have been just like Sunday we would usually take off, and then maybe bike a little bit. Outside of that, it was just the weight training. So I didn't go for walks or play any other sports too much like during my marathon training time. So yeah, no, just I guess maybe a little bit of biking early on in my running career, but towards the end, not marathon stuff, not really.
Yeah. Big
Because it's
question.
so taxing. Sorry, real quick, it's just physically taxing on your body to put in all these miles that sometimes the thought of doing anything extra just sounds exhausting, and then it ends up making you feel exhausted too. So I didn't want to overdo it too much since I was probably running more than I should be.
Okay. Yeah, our goal has been to I say our because Zion's always with me, right? She's actually groaning right now. She probably has to go to the bathroom. So so we should probably do a bathroom break here in a minute. But our whole goal is to just go a little bit further every time that we do go for a long run, and then try to complement it with as much cardiovascular training throughout the week as possible. So my workouts, I've been reducing them to 25 working sets, but like they're basically to failure. So I'm training less, but training hard during the time that I am training. A lot of like blood flow restriction and things like that we've been talking about that have been helping with working around joint injuries. And then a lot of stair mill. Like it just wins me, it gets me gas, and I kind of feel the same way after like a long run. So I mean, yesterday's marathon training was actually just like a half-hour run in the morning. I didn't time it, and didn't have time to time it. And then we were trying to beat the clock and get to church on time. And then took the kids and Zion to the gym and just did an hour straight on the treadmill at volume level 7. And so by that point, I was like, okay, I feel like that was pushing it. That was just like a couple more minutes than last time. And it's just like bodybuilding, right? I mean, it's just a matter of that it like anybody can probably do it, even if you're not the most genetically gifted. But I mean, anybody can get better, right? Anybody can. It's just like progressive overload over time.
Yeah, getting the mileage in. I think my key was being consistent with the mileage and increasing the mileage a few months, before the actual race, going for that long run once a week. But I think your strategy is pretty good, because the only difference, it seems like to me, between my strategy and your strategy is instead of running like 5 to 7 miles through the week, you're doing elliptical. And I was weight training too, but again, going back to this whole, you can do both weightlifting and running and do both well, but one of them, when you're competing for something, one of them has to be sacrificed to some extent. And so
Yeah.
especially when you're putting in the higher mileage as you get towards the race, being in the weight room is going to be a struggle. So I think for me, it was 30 to 45 minutes in the weight room when the mileage is high, just trying to do whatever I could to just be consistent with the weight training, and I guess maintain some kind of muscle mass with that high mileage was about all I could squeeze out. But it's the same with bodybuilding. When you get towards the show, you just got to survive. You're depleted, but you got to crank out as much of the workout as best you can. So it's the same thing. But I think what you're doing, the key will be the cardiovascular. But I do think that there's a difference between you being on a stair mill or an elliptical versus running outside. So
for sure.
I would even say if you could Out a
because like
few more.
I found that out real quick in high school because I was running in the summer training for cross country, right? And then hockey season comes around, and then it's like, man, oh man, I can run 3 miles like it's nothing, but whew, couple lines back and forth on the ice, and I'm out of breath. You know?
Yeah, so yeah, if you could increase the mileage throughout the week a little bit, or just get out and run a few more times outside of your long run, that's key. Because when I was in Hawaii a couple weeks ago, and I climbed Mauna Kea, and me and my climbing partner were at the top, and there were these two women up there, and you could drive to the top of Mauna Kea too, but why would you drive if you can climb, right? So anyways, they were talking to us, and the girl was like, I'm going to try to run, or I'm going to try to climb Kilimanjaro in early February, so I'm basically up here to acclimate. And me and Jonathan looked at each other and we're like, if you're trying to acclimate for Kilimanjaro, you should probably be climbing Mauna Kea.
Yeah.
So it's the same, not the exact same thing, but it's sort of like, no, sweetie, it's not the same thing. But
Cool.
but the marathon training, I mean, the training for that is, it's no joke. So as you get closer to it, I don't know if you've selected a marathon yet.
No,
No.
no idea.
Okay, so you can kind of.
Mimi, I don't think you know who Mimi is. She's one of our clients on the East Coast, but we're trying to find a time like around August. I think is kind of where like the way that my training is going, that I would probably be in the best shape to be able to actually pull this off is around August this year of 2023, and that would be about 3 months before Taylor's first show. It's going to be a couple months after your next show too, and so that I'm not having to focus on any one particular client right then and there, and then that'll give me a good month to just kind of focus and be an athlete, and then get back into coaching mode after that.
Okay,
Obviously,
so you don't really have to increase
obviously
your mileage.
coaching full time. I'll be coaching the entire time, but will not be taking any new clients for that month. That's for darn sure.
Oh, yeah, no way. Trust me, yeah, that would be overwhelming. But at least you have a couple months before you would have to really start to get into that high mileage.
Mm-hmm.
But
Cool.
it is good to try to get up to 20 miles at some point before you actually run the race.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, it's certainly not something to where bodybuilding and running, I think everybody can agree, don't necessarily, like they can complement each other and it can be done, but all the science that I'm aware of on running is that it is catabolic on specifically leg tissue, not so much calves, but more so thighs. And so I would certainly find it really, really, really hard, and for the reasons that you just described, to do both at the same time. However, having experience doing both in your case, did you notice that running in and of itself was catabolic to any of your muscle tissue that you had before, or I know it wasn't as much of a concern, but I'm just kind of wondering what you experienced there.
I think it's now more of like looking back on it. I think back then, deep down, I knew that the answer to that was yes, but I didn't want to admit it to myself because I refused to give up either. And I was, I guess, set on proving that you could do both well. And like I said, you can. But now that I think just being in the environment at Body Shop, you just learn so much. And so it taught me, I really didn't know a lot about weightlifting and how hypertrophy actually works. And so now that I'm more aware of it, it's easier for me to admit
there's a lot of seasoned bodybuilders that are really good at teaching that. That's a good environment
right.
to be in.
And I even had people, so when I started getting more into weightlifting in Atlanta, after my running injury, there were people that would say the same thing. Like, if you're going out and running 7 miles, you're not going to be able to put on a lot of mass. And in my head, like, watch me, but you don't. I was lean, but I wasn't big by any means back then either. So, and now, even just training right now for this next show, I really have only run like twice since November. And I think that's my legs. I sent you the picture the other day. I think my legs are definitely making some noticeable improvements.
Your legs have grown a lot lately. Yeah, especially the vastus lateralis, that outer quad.
If I'm putting in a bunch
for someone that tall like you, relatively speaking, taller than most other female competitors in women's physique, that's certainly something that's necessary, and it's pretty impressive that you actually are seeing that quad sweep right now. So yeah, no, when you sent that to Taylor and me, I was like, what happened to her? Good job.
I love it. Thank you. And but if I put a picture up to, even before having a lot of definition in my legs, but even just like from, I don't know, when we started training last year, I still think there's a noticeable difference in my leg mass compared to if you looked at me back, 2016, 2017. It was just skinny legs with no muscle definition. And I still struggle with that, but we're getting somewhere, I think, finally. So, yeah. So, but the answer to that is, unfortunately, I think, yeah, it's inevitable that the running is catabolic to some extent, but it's just a matter of which one, running or weightlifting, which one do you prefer? Which one are you favoring for the time being? And I think that's going to show.
Yeah. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that at some point you need to take a step back and look at the big picture too, and go, okay, is running technically catabolic on to your leg, to leg muscle tissue on paper? Yeah, let's get honest with ourselves. It is, right? Now, what makes a great physique? Being able to stick to something long term, having good, having being able to optimize your hormone levels. For me, I get a huge serotonin boost every time I go for a run. Like, it's therapy. It's the first thing Zion and I do every single day. And me being sick, like, I slept in till 8. I never do that. Like, I'm always beat the sun up 5 or 6 out the door, But this one, you don't even want to, like, I don't even want to have to describe the stuff that I was coughing up and sniffling out of my nose. I don't know. I guess that didn't really make any sense. Sniffling is in your nose. I don't know. Blowing snot rockets, I guess, on this morning's run, but it just feels good. It's just a great way to start the day. And then it's an opportunity to meditate. It's an opportunity to pray, start the day off talking with God, and then kind of visualize what the day is going to look like, and start putting everything together. Because when you own 2 businesses and have a couple toddlers, I mean, like, every day's over here is different. You got clients that like cancel and have to reschedule, and man, the whole day can change real quick, but like, not having that, I wouldn't be the athlete that I am. I wouldn't be the coach that I am, and it's like, as long as you're running, okay, let's have a goal and have some fun with it this year. I'm not going to step on stage anytime soon, so let's just maintain our muscle mass and just change the focus for 1 year and see what we can do on the carnivore diet that isn't bodybuilding.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's fantastic, actually. And you got to do whatever, it sounds corny, but whatever your body's telling you to do, you got to lean that way. So like, I miss running. I think it got to the point.
And running gives you an opportunity to do that too. It's like, when you're running, it's like you can, I mean, half the time I'm like doing arm swings and stuff to kind of wake my rotator cuff up, and just taking a real careful inventory of how my body feels. What should I train today? What needs to be worked more? What needs to be worked less? And when you're running, you just get so in the zone, you can forget about everything else, and you can actually focus on it.
That runner's high is fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it, but I would hardly ever run with headphones when I was doing a lot of my training. And even when I ran marathons, it sounds crazy, I didn't run with headphones, because that was my time to think. That was my time to reflect and just enjoy the present moment. But it takes a while to get up to that point. I think,
like, if the next song on your playlist is one that you're not driving with, you're like, oh, then you got to take your phone off. You got your headphones dangling all over the place. Like, no, not this song. But
hey. Not this one either. Not this one either. And it's just like, no, just enjoy the training for what it is. So I think for me, it got to the point where I couldn't ever run for fun. I was just too competitive. So that just took a toll on me mentally too. So aside from the whole marathon thing, like, even signing up for 5Ks, I have it in my head that, I used to run this time, so I wouldn't be able to do that now. So now there's no point in doing the race. And it's a combination of that. And then just, I love how I look and feel now that I'm just drawn to the weightlifting for the time being. So it's like, that's why I said, you got to go whatever, your body's drawing you more towards, you got to go do that. So for me right now, it's the bodybuilding and the weight training. Like, I love feeling big and putting on size and making my muscles more defined, more so than going out and running 7 miles and being skinny.
Yeah. Cool. Well, good stuff. I think the maximum length of a podcast that I can record is 90 minutes on WeVideo.
Oh, boy.
And there's so much stuff that we wanted to talk about, but I'm not surprised. Are you surprised that we're over time?
No, my running career story was quite long, so I didn't know it was going to be that
anytime
long.
you and I ever talk, it is never a short conversation.
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm one of those people where I'm pretty quiet until you get to know me, and then I never shut up, and it can be quite annoying sometimes too. So
Hey,
we're at that point now.
Yeah, why do you
What?
think I have a podcast? It's like now I can do the best of both worlds, you know.
Right, right,
Like,
exactly.
let's just make talking about life and learning a show. Yeah, there we go.
Right. But I hope my story inspires people who are thinking about running or maybe aren't good at running right now. There's nothing special about me. It was seriously just putting in the work and then having that one person that believed in you outside of just your typical parents or close friends, you know, that can make all the difference in the world. And once you go through these tough races, tough times, the weather, how you're feeling, I kind of think for the next time you think back on that and you're like, well, if I got through that, I can get through anything.
Exactly. So, yeah, and then you work. That's one of the best things I'm noticing is that I know we're over time. Sorry, but like throughout the rest of the week, my cardiovascular health in my bodybuilding training, that's improved. And so here again, it's like is running necessarily hurtful to someone that is a bodybuilder? I mean, on paper, yeah. Scientifically speaking, yeah. But okay, let's look at the big picture again. You really overextend yourself one day a week on your cardiovascular training. Now you're better at your workouts. Now you're better at everything else. What does it come down to? Superset your life. I've heard that somewhere. Who came up with that?
Yeah, me too. I forget where.
Well, thanks so much, Carly. Wow. Yeah, no, I got pages of notes on everything that you just said. That was super inspiring. That was all stuff that I needed to hear, and I'm excited for everybody else to hear it too, because there's you know, being an extreme athlete is fun. It's exhilarating, and it changes you and puts a discipline into you that you can apply into other areas of your life. Hence, superset your life. That is that's extremely valuable. And so I just wanted to say it's an honor working with you. It really, really is. And you're going to blow a lot of minds this year for you to have done everything that you've done up to this point with basically conquering so many different aspects of athletics, and now doing another NPC show to where we're coming in quite a bit more muscular than you did a couple months ago at our last show. I mean, it's going to be the best physique of your life. I'm so amped for you. This is great. And half the fun of coaching you is just that you, I mean, I feed off of this energy. You and I are really, really similar because neither of us are like necessarily gifted or an expert, or like you said, special at necessarily one thing, but we just work and don't stop for nothing until we get it right.
Consistency and patience. That's all it takes over time.
Yeah. Well, on that note, okay, I cannot. Okay, and you just said patience, so I have to pull out Hebrews 12:1 again. I think that's the best way to wrap this up. Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, and run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lay before him endured on a cross and despised the shame, has sat down on the right hand of God's throne. That's where he's at right now. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening. I hope Carly's words inspired you. I don't know how they didn't. Just thanks for being who you are, Carly. You're super, super cool. Mix those words together. I'm sorry, it's after my run and workout.
You said my last name right earlier. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Carly Kovacik. Where's the best place to find you, Carly, if people want to follow your journey?
Well, I've got my Instagram. I don't know if you'll link it in the show notes or whatever, but it's my last name. It's my last name with a C attached at the end, just for my first letter of my first name, Kovacik C. I'm also on Facebook, and I even do Twitter too.
Awesome.
Or you find me. I live at Body Shop Fitness in Bothell. You can find me there usually.
Good stuff. Yeah. heck of a physique, can't miss her. And so if you want to be inspired, definitely check out what she's up to on Instagram. Like I said, it's either a mountain or a physique post, or you never know what she's going to post next. So glad you're in our lives, in our lives, Carly. It's been a lot of fun chatting today, and we're gonna have another episode soon. And I think it was gonna be you and Taylor chatting up a storm, right? So
that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm down.
Cool. Let's go that in a couple weeks. We're gonna see you here soon too, and so we'll record lots more YouTube footage there. If you guys want to see Carly in action, our YouTube channel, Skullbellz TV, all one word, SKULLBELLZ. She's been featured in quite a few of our training videos lately, so that's been a lot of fun. Other than that, thanks again, everybody, so much for joining. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next episode.